Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. Today we're going to be talking all about the election, all about the next steps, and where we go from here when it comes to Corona. First off, it appears as though the election is over. I gave you guys a little bit of a break from Drawn and Cornered because there was plenty out there. I kind of needed to reassess myself and just figure out what's happening. At this point, the election seems to be decided. They've called most of the states that are important for Donald Trump. There will be, of course, a ton of legal issues that'll be handled in Pennsylvania and Georgia, and maybe a recount in Michigan and Arizona and so on, in Nevada maybe. But it's kind of a question of, is there ever going to be enough? Even if all of this stuff is true, even if every complaint of fraud or inaccurate ballots or stuff that's being counted that shouldn't have been counted, if all of that was true, is there enough to overturn any or all of those states that would be necessary to give Trump the win? And it seems highly unlikely at this point. I mean, it would be astronomically against the odds to pull each one of those off. And I think the most terrifying thing is that even if that were to happen, what that would do to the country at large if he were to essentially steal this victory from the jaws of defeat would... I think it would be devastating. I don't know that there are a lot of people that would be able to handle that on the left, and I think because of that, the infighting would only get worse and so on. So I don't know technically that even a win for Trump at this point, as remote as it might be, would be a positive. I am, of course, for it because I think that as you look through these laws and the things that were and weren't done properly, following the law is the best way to go. I just don't know how easy that's going to be to swallow for people that have essentially already been partying in the streets about Joe Biden's victory here. So we'll see how that plays out. The good news, it seems unlikely that it's going to happen anyway, so I don't know why the speculation is vitally important, but that is my guess. So now we move on to the next. Joe Biden is already pushing for his commission to deal with coronavirus. He's bringing back a couple of former staffers from previous administrations and people that Trump fired or have left under Trump or were disbanded in the task force, and he's reassembling that so that we can get some idea. He's talked very specifically about getting a national mandate going. He will be talking to governors to try and get them to institute that, and then if they won't do it, he says he's going to drop down to the mayoral and local village and township levels and things like that. So national mandate is headed our way. Now, I do find it wildly interesting that everybody that talked about Trump as an authoritarian are all of a sudden wholly on board for a federal national mandate, which my understanding is there's no legal way to do that. There's also no way to really enforce it. So Joe Biden's essentially just urging governors to make a mandate, which most of them are, some aren't. But I think it's also a little bit interesting to think about the difference between, a mandate in New York versus a mandate in Billings or Tulsa. It's just like we're talking about very different sections of America, and they will handle coronavirus differently. They will handle mandates differently. It's just everything seems up in the air a little bit with this mandate possibility. There are other things that are supposed to be going down in the first 100 days. A lot of them seem to tilt more to the left than I think he ran on. But we'll see. There was also an interior Democratic call immediately after the election to talk a little bit about everything down ballot. Obviously, they won the presidential, or at least seemingly have won the presidential at this point. And everything down ballot, though, kind of went the opposite direction. They lost seats in the House. They didn't take back the Senate until we get to Georgia, which we'll talk about in a second. So it wasn't quite the blue wave that they were hoping for. And there was a lot of discussion amongst Democratic officials about why that occurred. The progressives, the hard left, were saying it wasn't because people were progressive enough. This is your AOCs, this is your squad who all got reelected. And then the fringe or the center left Democratic candidates were saying that they barely hung on. They barely won their races because of all the talk of defund the police and Medicare for all and Green New Deal. They said these things really hurt us, and we barely held on to our seats and even lost some of them because of that rhetoric. And the infighting between those two is going to be very interesting to see and who wins. It reminds me a little bit of the Tea Party versus the establishment Republicans that we had back in 2012. and that infighting as to which direction this party is going to go from here on out. It will be interesting to see which side the left takes, which side Biden jumps on, and how we progress forward from there. Now, all eyes are on Georgia. Georgia is the most important place to be right now. And what we're going to see is, because there are still 2 outstanding Senate elections there, there's going to be money just flooding in there. Both of these are going to be runoffs. I believe they happen on January 5th. So it's just going to be flooded and flooded and flooded with money from both sides, because the balance of the Senate, which is the balance of the totality of government, either it's going to be entirely Democratic, or there's going to be a Republican Senate that can kind of push back against some of those ideas and hopefully bring a little bit of leverage to any sort of conservative ideas. It'll be interesting to see if that happens, but Georgia is going to be the battleground for that, as those 2 races will decide whether the Senate tilts Democratic or Republican. So keep your eyes on where that's going. Also, be prepared for so much money in a Senate race that we unheard of. $1 billion will be thrown into that place, and we will see who ends up taking the whole thing. Thank you very much for watching. This is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. If you have any questions for me, you can leave them down in the comments. You can reach out to me at drawnandcornered@gmail.com. Otherwise, we will see you here tomorrow.